States. It's Mark from the United States.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Mark from the States. How are we doing today? I'm doing fantastic. I hope you are as well. Thank you so much for coming back and hanging out. It's been a couple days. I hope you're fantastic as well. I've been gone for the last couple days. I've been just kind of overwhelmed with things that are going on in my life. Nothing bad, just busy. That's all. But it's good to be back. Hope all of you are doing well. We'll probably do another live stream here, maybe in a week or so. As you know, my son is counting the days down before he heads out. And I think we'll go over his itinerary one more time before he takes off. I'd love to have him on, but he's usually sleeping when I'm doing these videos, so definitely going to have him on when he comes back, so to kind of see what's up. But until then, today I wanted to revisit with two people that I absolutely adore. This is Kara and Jeremy, Magic Geekdom. There is an interview on the channel, if you haven't seen it, that I had with them. Wonderful people. Please go support their channel. It's important. It really is important that you go like the video. Just one like is such a big deal. It really is. It helps. They put out some great stuff. You would be, if you are not familiar with them, they visit the UK many times and filmed a lot of places that they went and the experiences that they had, and it's just it's enjoyable, and so I recommend go to their channel, do all the things, like, subscribe, do all the wonderful things that you do to help them out. Of course, links to this video and to their channel will be in the description as always. Good friend of the channel, Linda, before we move on, sent me this article. Of course, it has one of my favorite people on there, the Telegraph magazine. So I'm so grateful. Thank you, Linda, for doing that. I've started reading it, and let me tell you, it's magazines are just a little different. They're similar, of course, in a lot of ways, but it's just, different. But that's what I love about it. I'm experiencing something new, and of course, it's about Princess Anne, who I absolutely adore. So thank you, Linda. Appreciate you. What else is going on? Well, a lot is going on in my life, but nothing too exciting. There's just a lot going on. I'm also reading this book, as you know, The Guide for Curious Wanderers of London. We're going to read something out of it. We're just going to flip through the pages, yell stop when, whoa, that was quick. That was a quick screen. Okay. Today, The Mystery of the London Stone. This is on 111 Cannon Street, BC, oh, I'm sorry, is that B or E? EC4N. I've got to get more glasses, a better pair. Apparently I've been getting the wrong glasses when I go and purchase them. I need to get more powerful ones. I was thinking the more powerful ones was in the opposite direction. These are like 150s or something. I need to be getting 250s. I always thought the lower the number would be the better, but no. Apparently my eyesight's worse than I thought. Anyway, EC4N5AR. So that's 111 Cannon Street, EC4N5AR. That's the location. One of the most mysterious objects on the streets of the capital is the London Stone. Firstly, what is it? It's a block of oolitic limestone of undetermined age, although some say it could date back to Roman times. It once stood at the end of Candlewick Street, now Cannon Street, opposite St. Swithin's Church. I believe that's how you pronounce that. Its location was first recorded here in the 12th century, and in 1557, the church was known as St. Swithin's at London Stone. It has been an important London landmark for centuries, possibly millennia, and there are various theories as to its original usage. Some think it could be a Roman millenarium or milestone from which to measure distances, hence why I have put it in this chapter on distances, I guess. Interestingly, it stood right at the center of a new street layout created by King Alfred the Great after AD 886. So, potentially, had some sort of significance for the Saxons. Old. We are talking very, very old. In 1450, Jack Cade, leader of the Kentish rebellion against King Henry VI, struck the stone with his sword and declared himself Lord of the City. These events appear in Shakespeare's Henry VI, Part 2. But the action of striking the stone has no other known recordings, so the potential significance has been lost. One of the most persistent myths about the stone is that it is destroyed. One of the most persistent myths about the stone is that if it is destroyed, London will fall. Until recently, it was kept behind a metal grill, but has now been given a nice new secure casing at 111 Cannon Street. So go and see the stone for yourself, but for goodness sake, don't destroy it. And there is a little picture, not an actual photo, but a drawing of it. Hopefully you saw that. And if any of you have actually seen it in person, please let me know. And if you have anything to add to that myth or story, I guess, please do. Today's video, which again, it will be linked, is Americans in England, 10 Things That Surprised Us About the UK. I love these little videos, of course. I hope to get there someday. Like I mentioned earlier, my son is going to be there in a couple weeks. So let's get into this. This is Americans in England, 10 Things That Surprised Us About the UK. It's with Magic Geekdom, Kara and Jeremy. Let's do it.
When we took our first trip to the UK, we were surprised, sometimes even shocked, by quite a few aspects of our experience as Americans in the UK for the very first time. Today we're going to talk about 10 of those surprises, and how over time we've truly come to appreciate most of them about our neighbors across the pond. And I'm going to start with not needing a car, because that was something that we were very surprised by. I felt like we did quite a bit of research in preparing for our first trip to the UK.
Yeah.
And when we planned it, I don't know, we're so American, I just assumed you needed a car. And that's not the case. You can get around so much easier with public transportation in the UK than you can in the US. If you were planning a trip to the UK, you may not want to have a car because you have to drive on the opposite side of the road that you're used to, potentially. Here we go.
You're doing it.
I am.
You're good.
It's weird, but it's wow. And the roads are very narrow and can be kind of scary and intimidating. You don't need a car, and we learned that the second trip. We didn't rent a car at all, and it was lovely to travel by train everywhere.
I think the aspect of having the car the first trip was nice, but also you don't really need it, like you said. The train system is just really good there. It's so much better than America. Granted, it's much smaller to cover that area, but trains go to most major cities, and then even smaller cities have a decent bus line, it seems like, too.
Yeah.
Besides being more walkable than a lot of our cities are.
Yeah, there are very few places where I felt having a car was preferable to not having a car. It is kind of funny to look back on that first time that we went and just how, without even thinking about it, I just booked us a car because I was like, well, we're gonna take a road trip. That's what you do, right? I should also mention that these are by no means in order of importance. Although, number one, I did reserve for the immediate shock that I experienced from the moment that we stepped into Heathrow Airport. I feel like it was the first thing that I noticed. I don't know, it still blows my mind. So we'll continue on. Number 9. I mean, we kind of already discussed this, but the narrow roads, I mean, we've talked about it a lot. It can be very intimidating to drive on roads that are, you know, hundreds if not thousands of years old compared to our big wide roads in America. But I think one of the things that surprised us even more from the experience, because I think you kind of know that going into it, but I was very surprised at how difficult parking can be.
Yeah, there's not very much free parking at all. Pretty much anywhere you go, you're going to have to go to a pay lot to park your car.
At least doing touristic things like we have done, and I think maybe that speaks to our experience traveling, is that we were going to places that are popular destinations to travel to. And so, yeah, car parks are difficult. The spaces can be very narrow because they're trying to pack as many cars as they can into these small little car parks. It can be very intimidating to not only try to find parking, but to, you know, not have to pay at least £1 or £2 everywhere you go, which it's not the worst thing. You just have to prepare for it, which we were not. There is a lot more free parking in the US.
There is, and I would say if you are going and renting a car, or you have a car there, get change. Get like pound coins, because a lot of them that even took credit cards didn't work very well.
That's true. We would go to a car park in a pretty remote area, and it would be like 7 people standing around holding their phone up trying to get a signal so that they could pay for parking. So you can't avoid that if you have
actual cash.
change. Yeah.
Number 8 would be that I think
before they continue on, yeah, there are a lot of free parking here, but there's all, like they put in their little notes, there is a ton of expensive parking as well. Just a touch, I know, and I've learned it from all of you and doing this channel, and of course learning from Kara and Jeremy. The roads are narrow, but you don't need a car. I mean, only if you want one to be able to kind of go explore on your own. I think yes, but since I will be going to London my first time, definitely will not be needing a car, and if I wanted to dart off to another town or city close by, you know, you have a train that goes there, and the transport that you have there, as I would say, transportation, is miles ahead of what we have here. And yes, it is due to the size of our countries. To go to city does take a long time, and they're far, far away. So that is a difference there. But just in the city of London or wherever you are, your transportation is going to be way better than ours. We have, of course, subways and buses, but it's just not easily as navigable. I guess I would say navigable. It's not as easy to use as I imagine and what I've seen for it to be there. So definitely looking forward to do all that too, to be able to. But you can also walk. There's just so much to see by using the transportation the good Lord gave you. So looking forward to it.
American travelers and just kind of international travelers in general do seem to mostly just go to London and call that good when there's so much more to see there. I mean, we love London, but also some of our favorite places are smaller cities and towns and villages there.
Yeah, I would say to layer on what you're saying, one of the things that surprises me about our travels throughout the UK is that we have a lot of people, even within the UK, who tell us that we've been to places that they've never been. And maybe part of that is because as Americans, things feel so close to us when we're there. Things seem so easily to accomplish, to just stop in these different places. I think that kind of surprised me that more people in the UK don't even travel kind of beyond certain areas. Like, I think a lot of people accomplish the big things, but there's a lot of places that you guys have let us know that you've never been to, and I'm surprised because there are some amazing places in the UK, and they're mostly outside of London. Not that London isn't great, but if you are planning a trip to the UK, as someone who's never been to the UK, do yourself a favor and go at least one other place outside of London.
Go to York, go to Cornwall, go to Newcastle. Like, all great places.
Yeah, it can be pretty expensive to make a trip to London or to make a trip to Edinburgh.
Yeah.
When you can have your money goes so much further in somewhere else that isn't as touristic, but still lovely. There are a lot of great places outside of London. So
Yeah, you hear that all the time. But my first visit, it's going to be London. Going to knock that out. And yeah, I would love to dip out of the city and see something else, and hopefully we were able to do that when we do eventually get there. So definitely good advice, and I hear that a lot from a lot of you. And of course, I know now, since doing our channel, you guys have helped me realize, of course, seeing all these wonderful things and places, that it isn't just London, obviously. So, totally looking forward to that.
7. Yeah. Okay, so here is one that I don't know that we've talked about a lot before, but it is an incredible thing, and I was so surprised to learn about it, especially as Americans. It feels kind of like a weird thing to be able to walk on people's private land, and that is footpaths. British footpaths are an extensive network of these footpaths throughout Britain that basically allow you to walk on private land and just take in all the different kinds of scenery that the different lands offer. One of my favorite memories of exploring the UK, especially when I think about memories that we've shared with our friends, is I treasure the fact that we got to walk through a footpath in Dorset with our friends Jason and Josh.
Yeah, we're just in the middle of this field with cows. There was a little spot that had preserved dinosaur footprints, which is just wild.
I love that we quite literally have to walk through a field with cows in it to get to where we're going. This is one of the coolest things I think we've done in England so far. It was so amazing. It just was a highlight of the last trip that we took there. That is just so neat. There are so many footpaths like that. I know when we were in Robin Hood's Bay, that is the end of, I think it's called the Coast to Coast footpath that goes all the way to Cumbria, I think is where it connects. It's like 200 miles long or something around that. And I think it would be so fun to plan like a bucket list trip to do something like that. But at the same time, we are not super adventurous, so I'm a little intimidated by the idea of walking 200 miles on a footpath. But maybe you have a suggestion for us for a footpath that we could start with. Maybe you know about some good footpaths that we should check out, because I'm all about them. The thing that is, I think, surprising about footpaths as Americans is that just doesn't seem like something that we would have here.
No, I feel like people are very more...
No trespassing.
Yeah, protective, I guess.
Yeah.
And I can see why. I mean, people can be disrespectful to people's land here, but I think it would be very cool if we had more footpath kind of things where we could walk through, I don't know, if you're in Utah or Arizona, like the desert, and there are like national parks and state parks that can offer that kind of thing, but it's just so cool that there's so many places you can just go and take a cool footpath in the UK.
Yeah, we have some that I would consider kind of similar. Like you can do the one that runs from like Mexico up to BC, I think you'd be hard pressed to convince Americans to make more of them.
Yeah.
But I am curious, what do you think about footpaths? Because I don't know. I imagine that they are probably well loved by people who use them, but maybe farmers or things don't love it. Maybe their land does get disrespected or something. So you'll have to let us know what you think about footpaths, and also which ones we should do in the future.
Another thing is,
Before they continue, yeah, the footpaths thing is a an idea, I guess, that it's sometimes at first it was like, wow, you just allow just strangers, to you it's totally normal, and it's actually maybe to some a source of pride. Yeah, this is our land, but it's all of ours land, Britain, England, wherever you're at, and I know that whole premise was kind of a foreign idea when I first heard about it, because she's right, here in the States, that's, people are very protective of their property, and, usually there's a path that goes around. As for like just footpaths in general, not a ton, at least of what I've seen. I'm sure there are, but just especially I can only speak of what's really that I've seen and what's around me is, if people want to do hikes and stuff like that, they go up in the mountains, up in the hills here right above our city, and you can do a lot of cool hikes. There's a couple parks that have hikes that go up into the hills and so on. But just in general, footpaths are kind of a non-existent thing here in the States for sure. And I think, we're kind of missing out on that. But there is that private property thing. And I don't know if that is based on the, manifest destiny type imagery of going west and grabbing, and then grabbing your piece of land to call your own, if it's been ingrained over centuries, but who knows? Interesting though. But yeah, footpaths, definitely unique to us anyway.
being treated like pretty nicely as Americans. People told us that certain cities and stuff, people wouldn't be nice, and I feel like pretty much we had a positive experience everywhere we went.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think
That's awesome.
Americans traveling internationally is a precarious thing because it is known that we are not well liked in
Certain
many
areas,
places.
yeah.
Like it's just known that people don't necessarily like Americans as a whole, and so I think it was surprising that I didn't have a single bad experience with anyone anytime.
Really?
In like the total of 7 months that we've spent in the UK, I think we've just had nothing but really
positive
lovely
experiences.
experiences. This is one that I think is kind of silly, but it also, it makes sense, and that is hot and cold taps. Have you ever...
I know I'm pausing a lot, but and I apologize. But they're right. Being an American, you just know that there's a lot of people in the world that don't like you just because of where we're from. It is nice to hear that that they, and they spent a long time there, that they've generally have always just had a wonderful, nice reception. And of course, with my son going over, that makes me happy to hear that. Of course, there's always people in everywhere you go who aren't the norm and probably are annoyed by Americans. And even if you are annoyed by us, it sounds like most of you will at least wait till we leave and then show your frustration, which is the proper thing to do, right? If we drive you crazy, you just, okay, and then wait till we leave, and then you can go, bloody Americans, and Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. Yeah, as an American, traveling internationally, everybody already knows that there's a good chance wherever you're going, they're not gonna like it.
In your life, come across a separate hot tap and a separate cold tap in the U.S.? Because I can name like maybe
Yeah.
3 experiences total.
But it's really only a handful of places.
Yeah. And so I think going to the UK and having that be the standard experience almost. I mean, a lot of newer facilities won't do that, but there's so many places
That
where
do still.
and it's like, well, what do I do? Do I like quickly run my hands back and forth and try to go between the 2 taps? Or do I just use the hot one and hope it doesn't get too hot before I'm done washing my hands? Yeah, it's a very interesting experience as an American that we're not quite used to. And I do get, it makes sense that there are so many. There's a lot of older plumbing. I mean, we experienced, I guess that's another surprise, with showers and things like that. Like, it just, differences.
Yeah.
Things that you're kind of used to in your day-to-day life, and you travel somewhere else and you're like, that's a little different. And yeah, it was just kind of a surprise. One of those things that I'm sure if someone came here and was like, wow, there's so many taps that aren't hot and cold, I'd be like, I wouldn't think anything of it. But,
yeah, that's fair.
Just those differences that kind of, especially our first trip, really stood out of like, this seems kind of inconvenient.
Another thing that was interesting.
That's
and
interesting.
I guess kind of jarring and definitely different was the first time we went to get some food that wasn't like a quick serve restaurant, that we were finished what we ordered and we're just kind of waiting because the service is different there.
And we talked about coming
Service,
back
yeah.
to the US after spending 8 months in Europe in our reverse culture shocks video that we made. I think one of the things that really was a weird adjustment to come back to was just the level of service that you get at restaurants and bars and things like that in the US. And I think on the flip side, the first time that we went to the UK, it was alarmingly weird. It was like, is somebody gonna check on us? What's going on? Like, where is everyone? Where does our server go? And we did. We spent probably 30, 45 minutes just sitting there waiting for them to bring the bill, because that's what they do in the US. We didn't want to be rude and flag someone down and ask for the bill, but then it turns out that that's what you do. That's the customary thing.
normal
and I think
process.
over time we've come to appreciate the level of service because it doesn't feel fake. It just feels natural. You don't feel rushed by having somebody bring you your bill before you're even done eating. But the first time that we went there, and it took a few times where we were like, gosh, this is just weird. And finally we said something to our friends and they were like, yeah, you gotta ask for the bill. And we didn't know that. We learned that the hard way a few times over.
Yeah, I don't even know that I'd call it level of service, because it sounds like the equivalent is kind of lower level. It's just kind of more pleasant.
Yeah, and I think we've kind of touched on this before too, like talking about friendly Americans versus friendly people in the UK. And I think why I kind of prefer the friendliness of the UK is because when people are friendly, it's genuine. It's not out of a need to get a tip or out of, trying to be. I feel like just sometimes Americans are kind of fake, and it's not all the time, it's not everyone, but I feel like it just feels more natural in the UK. If someone's nice to you, they're just being nice to be nice. And I don't know, maybe that's a little more rare here in the US. Maybe not. I don't know.
It might change. Our pay structure and tipping culture is kind of changing here a little bit. People are getting paid a little better to do those kind of service jobs. So maybe that'll change in the long run. But right now, they are pretty different.
Yeah.
He's right. They are the minimum wage has, and it does depend on the state, has been changing. The only byproduct, negative, well, not the only negative, but one of the negatives is a lot of people are having their hours cut now that they're getting paid more per hour. But as for service, if it depends on what kind of service, needs you were looking at. But yeah, there is a cool deal where you're from to where you could just, and Jeremy and Kara discussed this in our interview together, kind of more in depth, but how you can just relax and not have to worry about, the next person that's waiting to come in. Obviously, here in the States, you can sit in most places, even if they bring you the bill, you could still sit there and do whatever you're doing. You don't have to leave, but they're right. If it's, you're having a really cool dinner and you're just having a bottle of wine and you're just relaxing and having a great conversation, it's nice to not have to be interrupted, asking, hey, you guys okay? What are you doing? Which, yeah, you do get here. But there's something to be said if you're in a hurry, that they are constantly giving you the attention you can get in and out. So it all depends on what kind of experience, I guess, you're looking for.
Yeah. It was definitely surprisingly different level of service. And I know a lot of you who have let us know when you've come to the US, it's been the same thing where you're like, why are you guys all up in my business? Please let me eat my meal in peace. And I think we've kind of become a little bit more leaning towards that direction.
Yeah.
But when we first went to the UK, it was not the case. It was like, what is happening? Where is our server? That was definitely a big surprise. I guess I would tack on to that just the length of time that you could spend in a restaurant too, or a pub. Like, there's no rush to get you out.
Yeah.
You're just there to have a good time, and gosh, I appreciate that. Thank you for doing that, because sometimes in the US I do feel rushed, and it makes me almost feel guilty, like, oh, I gotta hurry and eat and get out of here because this server needs to make their money. But it is just, it's one of those differences that I definitely appreciate the British culture of serving in restaurants and pub culture a lot more than
Especially when
I
you're
did
on
initially.
vacation.
While we are talking about pub culture kind of and food and stuff
Exactly.
like that.
He's going to get into it, but especially if you're, for me who loves the history of pubs and the whole thing about pubs, I would want to spend as much time there as possible to just let the whole place soak in. So, and he's hopefully going to discuss it right now.
I would say that the UK portion sizes can be drastically different from the US portion sizes, and probably in a more healthy and just better way.
That's something we haven't, I guess, talked about as much. We've covered food a lot on this channel. There's a lot of differences in food that make me like the US version of food a little bit less. And portion sizes is, I think, one of them. On the one hand, I think when we first got there, it is a little bit surprising to see a regular portion of food and not have like this huge plate of food that you really don't need to eat. But I don't notice the difference as much now, but I do remember that it was pretty shocking at first.
And I feel like, there's exceptions to that. You can find a pretty large, like, fish and chips, something like that. But in general, they just seem like you guys have more reasonable portion sizes.
Yeah. I mean, that's true. That's a good point, because we went to Victoria, BC, and we ate fish and chips there, and we each ordered one because we were thinking they were going to be just like little fillets, like little tenders kind of thing, like we do typically in the US, and they were a lot larger than we were expecting. Not the huge portion of fish and chips in the UK, but they were definitely pretty large. It was like, oh yeah, I don't know why we thought that these would be smaller than they were.
Yeah, I don't know.
I do have to make an honorable mention, just talking about, British food, pub food, and what?
Oh, I know where you're going.
He knows where I'm going.
Yeah.
Diet Coke in a glass bottle. I was so pleasantly surprised to learn that exists in the UK. You really can't find it in the US. I found it at a grocery store once.
But it tasted different,
It
didn't it?
tasted different. Yeah, it wasn't the same. And, if you want Coke products in glass bottles in the US, you usually get Mexican Coke.
Yeah.
But they don't really make Diet Coke in a Mexican Coke form.
Or at least they don't send it up here. Really.
Yeah.
They do.
So just to see Diet Coke in a glass bottle and be able to order at a bar is just, God, I miss that about the UK. It makes me want to plan a trip right now so I can go back and get my Diet Coke in a glass bottle. Okay, honorable mention though. Not enough to be a huge thing on the list, but it is lovely. Okay, So number 2 is kind of a big one. I kind of encompassed a few things in it, and I said that the number 2 thing that surprised us was the efficiency of the UK. And what I mean by that is, just all these little things that make me as an American feel like we're kind of behind the rest of the world. For example, contactless pay. I think that we're starting to roll that out more and more in the US. But even at a restaurant, the waiter will still take your card and go take it off.
Most of the time.
And bring it back to you.
You're seeing more of it now.
Yeah. I don't know. That was such a pleasant surprise to go to a pub and have the card reader brought to your table, to use your card at the table. The card never leaves my hand. It's like, even when you go through a fast food drive-thru, a lot of times you hand it to them, and it's like, well, hopefully I see that again.
Well, and I feel like when we did go do that at first, we tried to give our card to them, and they're like, why? No, I don't want to touch your card.
Yeah.
I don't want to be responsible for that.
Makes sense. But yeah, that was one of the things I think is very surprising in a good way. In a way that I go, why don't we do that in the US? That's
I've heard
weird.
that.
That seems antiquated, and
I've heard.
It kind of is.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that it's changing here, but it's still better there.
It is
yeah,
changing.
The whole idea of efficiency is like, even from the moment that we got into the airport, we pretty quickly went through customs. Like we got through Border Patrol and customs and everything very quickly. And I feel like the process the other direction is not as easy. No. And I just think as the US, it's like, why do we make things so chaotic and harder than they need to be?
Right.
I'm sure that that's true in many ways of...
I'll tell you why. It's because the government's in charge of it. They never can make anything streamlined and easy. Get them out of it.
Like, each country has their things they're better at and their things that are worse at. But I just felt like there were so many things we experienced in the UK that just made me feel like it was more efficient. Just like trains, and you just go, you get on your train, there's nothing to it. And I think that seems like anything like that in the US, we have to make things more complicated than they need to be. And
Agreed.
I don't know, maybe that's just my impression.
I get where you're coming from.
I think I wrote down one more of that. Oh, queuing. That's another thing. As part of like the efficiency thing is, I think a lot of times in the US, we kind of just like flock, and we just like flock to a line.
As a mob?
As a mob. And even sometimes like going in a drive-thru where like you're taking turns, like maybe 2 cars merge. Gosh, I should have put that one as, that's a whole other thing. But people are just nicer, like they take turns. Like there's just more turn taking and more politeness of like the back and forth. It just feels more efficient rather than like 14 cars trying to drive the furthest that they can and cut everyone else off.
That's fair, yeah.
I just feel like that's such an American attitude. Not that it doesn't happen other places. Germany is known for being very efficient. And
queuing.
In so many ways, I think the people there are very efficient. One thing I did notice though is when we went and got on a boat, we were getting on a tour, and as soon as the boat opened, it was just like this mass of people just like in a clump, and it was almost chaotic.
Mm-hmm.
It was a popular, busy summer day tour kind of thing. So it kind of made sense, and maybe it was a bunch of tourists, but it was like, oh, this is not the queuing we are used to in the UK. I don't know that I've ever heard the UK being considered efficient, but I do think that there are a lot of things that are very efficient about the UK, especially from an American perspective.
If we learned something from our UK friends. Some of y'all love a queue.
I get it.
Not complaining, just saying.
The number one thing that I immediately was surprised by.
Before they get into number one, like I said earlier, you guys have, mastered the art of queuing. It does get chaos here. People are idiots here who don't understand about waiting your turn. And that is one thing I'm actually looking forward to when I do visit. Obviously, that's not the reason why I'm going, but it's just how order that is. You guys just get it. We don't, I think, as a whole. I don't want to stereotype everybody in the States, but yeah, definitely waiting in line is can be it can be violent. Yeah, I hate to say it, but I'm sure it can. A lot of arguments have started for sure. Yeah, I don't understand why we don't get that, to be honest with you. But yeah,
from the moment that we set foot into Heathrow Airport and basically throughout the rest of our travels, I just kept going, oh my gosh, was the bathrooms or the toilets, and how in the US
number one.
we have the saddest
Yeah.
stalls that you can see through. They're
Yeah.
flimsy. I mean, you can see somebody doing their business if you want to, and I don't think we experienced that a single time in the UK. Like, I don't even remember seeing that American style of stall in a bathroom.
No.
Yeah, it's just, gosh, the little things that you take for granted. I mean, I was so surprised. Like, why are we doing this so wrong in the US?
Right.
It seems like a simple enough fix, but I understand that it's probably a lot more expensive to construct full doors, solid bathroom area where you can
ain't that
have
much
privacy. It's
Come
definitely
on.
more cheap and efficient to throw up a
Weird
flimsy
divider
stall. Yeah, like a cardboard divider.
Well, they're
basically.
metal, but
I
yeah.
know. They don't feel a lot better than cardboard though.
I
Yeah.
feel like the only thing I would equate that to, sort of, in the UK is like maybe a pub or a bar's bathroom that has like a urinal, a toilet that has a urinal. Might only have like a small divider like in the US, but your regular toilet stalls are way, 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 way better.
They really truly are. And I think just how flimsy we make them and how cheap and inexpensive they are kind of speaks to the American experience of like, just tear it down and build a new one because that'll be cheaper than preserving
Wow,
this historic building.
You
Or I
nailed
feel
it,
like-
Kara. For sure.
What was it called? The walkie-talkie building that we went to on our first trip?
Oh, in London.
I don't know
yeah.
if you went into those toilets. I did.
Yeah,
That was
they were
super
nice.
fancy.
Yeah.
I felt like I was in a fancy hotel or something.
Yeah, they were like door to ceiling. Like you got your own private little bathroom.
Yeah.
And it was very nice.
Mhm.
Yep. Liked those. I mean, there were a lot of them, experiences like that throughout Britain that America would never. But in all seriousness, we should.
Probably, yeah.
Thanks for listening to us ramble about our experiences in the UK. I think it's been good to reminisce in the videos that we've been making lately because we don't have a current trip planned, but it's been a good reminiscing to do. I'm curious if you have noticed anything, any of the items that we mentioned going the other direction, especially the toilets and the bathroom stalls. Like, have you noticed that when you've gone to the US? Have you been alarmingly surprised by how terrible our bathrooms are? Thank you for watching. Thank you so much to our patrons for supporting our channel. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon member, there's exclusive perks. You can check out the link below. And you should make sure to watch our video where we talk about our experience coming back to the US and all of the weird reverse culture shocks that we had, especially around American food after spending 8 months in the UK. That video's right over here, right there. See you there. Carly says,
I love them. They're great. Please go support their channel. Go watch the videos they're suggesting. And yeah, they've made a lot of points that we've talked about before, and I've gotten messages from a lot of you as well. Bathrooms. Yeah, I don't know why we do them the way we do. I just don't get it. There's a lot of theories out there. I'm not even going to repeat them because they're all BS. It's so dumb. So dumb we do it like that. I've been to some places here in the States that do have nice, private. You have your own door. It's an actual door that closes, and you're inside but those have been more in the upscale establishments, but just the generic bathroom is it's awful. So I cannot wait to use your bathrooms. I can wait, but you know what I mean. It's such a small thing, but really it goes a long way. And I've seen Europeans who've come over and go, why do you do that? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's because we are cheap. It's terrible. If that was really the reason why they did that, that would be the worst. Ugh. I love my country, but geez. We can't even get a bathroom stall right. Sometimes. But, yeah, efficient. You perfected queuing. These are all just everyday things you deal with that for someone who doesn't, I can see why it would surprise, let's say, an American going over there. It's all stuff that you've taken for granted, not in a bad way, but just you're used to it. It's just how it is. It's always been like that. But for some of us who've never experienced that, you get there, and it doesn't matter where you go, you're always going to find something like that. But yeah. Why do they do it like that? Anyway, thanks for coming. You guys are amazing. Today I'm off to a wine festival. So tomorrow I'm hoping to do some videos. I might do another one today. But we'll see how I feel tomorrow morning. But I hope everybody's happy, healthy, and safe. Thanks so much for coming. And we'll see you in the next one. All right, take care. Bye.
Mark from the States, Mark from the States, it's Mark